from Buena Vista College, Innovation Video brings you the news for Monday, September 12th. Heavy flooding was reported on the east coast of Jamaica because of Hurricane Gilbert today. Gilbert hit Jamaica's eastern tip earlier with 150-mile-an-hour winds. Thousands of residents in Kingston were evacuated as the storm neared the capital. Forecasters expect the storm to grow even stronger and could dump 5 to 10 inches of rain that could cause flash floods and mudslides. Hurricane Gilbert could threaten the United States later this week. The deputy chairman of the Republican National Committee resigned Sunday following a report he once complied totals of Jewish employees in a branch of the Labor Department. The published report in the Washington Post said Frederick Malek counted the number of Jewish workers at the direction of President Nixon in the 1970s. Malek termed the report offensive and incorrect. Bush termed Malek, quote, an honorable man without a trace of bigotry in his makeup. Malek had mixed emotions about his resignation and had this to say about the issue.
Is there anything you can add to what we've seen?
I think my statement speaks for itself. I had very mixed emotions about stepping down because I love George Bush. I want to help George Bush be elected president. But by the same token, I thought that this was going to be an issue that could be used by the opposition. It would detract from the real issue of the campaign, and I simply did not want to be personally in the way of what really should be discussed in this campaign. That's George Bush's great record and his hopes for the future.
Vice President Bush announced today the formation of a 13-member bipartisan panel that includes some of the top national security experts. Before leaving Washington on a 5-day campaign swing, Bush said his national security task force will be headed by Zbigniew Brzezinski, the former national security advisor to President Carter. Others on the panel are Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State under President Ford, and Lieutenant General Brent Scowcroft, former Ford national security advisor. Bush had this to say about the new panel.
And it's gratifying to know that such a distinguished group has come together to support my candidacy and my efforts to lead America into the 1990s. The members of the task force embody the best in our tradition of bipartisanship, emphasizing that when it comes to U.S. foreign policy, they are neither Republicans and Democrats. They are Americans. My objective is to shape a foreign policy built on the principles of bipartisanship, built on the principles of realism, strength, dialogue, and engagement.
Democratic presidential candidate Michael Dukakis is stepping up efforts to define his foreign policy position. Dukakis plans to outline a foreign policy that addresses trade, terrorism, and drugs. In remarks prepared for a Philadelphia labor audience, Dukakis criticized Bush for his vice presidential role as head of Reagan administration task force on terrorism.
In each of these 3 areas, George Bush has failed. I want to be winning against our foreign competitors. He's willing to settle for second place. I want to crack down on terrorism. He knuckled under to the Ayatollah. I want a real war against drugs. His answer to drug kingpins like Noriega is J. Danforth Whale.
Many residents returned to their homes yesterday as the worst floods in the history of Bangladesh began to recede. The government has received $236 million in aid to fight the destruction and disease caused by the flooding. More than 200,000 people have contracted diseases and at least 123 have died. Hundreds of volunteer organizations are aiding in the massive relief effort. Snow, rain, and cool temperatures helped firefighters battle over 1/2 dozen wildfires in Yellowstone National Park today. The cooler temperatures are going to raise humidity and the wood will absorb some of the moisture, making it less likely to burn. This was the first chance the fighters have had since May to go on the offensive against the fires that have burned more than 1 million acres. However, warmer weather is expected to return by Wednesday. The Iowa Board of Regents will be asked this week to boost student tuitions at the state's 3 universities from 7% to 9% this fall. Regents Executive Secretary Wayne Ritchie says the proposed increases are essential if the universities are to maintain their educational excellence. He says the money raised by the tuition increases would pay for about 1/3 of the double-digit pay raises for faculty members. The Miss America crown is now worn by a petite violinist from our neighboring state of Minnesota. She's Gretchen Carlson, who won the honor this weekend in Atlantic City, New Jersey. The 22-year-old told reporters she was once overweight, couldn't get a date, and was called Blimpo by her brothers. She then waded into chilly Atlantic waters to pose in the surf for photographers. And Terry is here now with the weather. Terry, how's it looking for the weather?
Well, that depends on where you stand. Of course, if you're on the east coast of Jamaica, you're in pretty bad shape. I just hope this storm loses a lot of its punch before it reaches towards us. Anyway, let's take a look at some national figures on the map. Oh, shit. What are they doing? Go. That's not right. The road commercials.
Just get in and talk about it.
I've got to go home.
Oh, come on, Carrie. We're going to a new place.
She wants to go home, right? Let's go.
Whoa. You okay to drive?
Yeah, I'm fine. You sure?
Relax.
What's a few beers?
If you don't stop your friend from drinking and driving, you're as good as dead. Drinking and driving can kill a friendship.
Users are losers and losers are users. So don't use drugs, don't use drugs.
Hi, McGruff, the crime dog, here with Regina, urging all of you to tell them to quit. Take a bite out of crime. For more information, write this address.
Innovation Video is your season ticket for Buena Vista College football action. Join us Tuesday night at 8 for a comprehensive look at the statistics and highlights of the action-packed game presented to you by host Tim Gallagher and coach Jim Hirschberger. So pull up your easy chair, sit back, and join Innovation Video for the Jim Hirschberger Show Tuesday night at 8.
That's camera one.
Go, Terry. Talk, Terry.
The Rockies today received their first measure of snowfall this year, with the foothills getting an inch of snow and the mountains getting 4 inches of snow. Now, this is important as the...
Just make it.
Well, I can't. I have to have a graph because I don't know what I'm doing. What the hell? Currently in Storm Lake, the temperature is 63. Let's take a look at other area temperatures. In Ames, we had a high of 75 and a low of 50. Storm Lake the same. Cedar Rapids 86 and a low of 65. With Council Bluffs through Spencer about the same, 75 and 80s. Yesterday we had a high of 86 and a low of 50, with a high a year ago at 74 and a low of 55. Today, mostly sunny and windy with a high of 70 and a low of 50, with winds from the northwest at 15 to 25 miles an hour. The barometer is 30 and falling. Sunrise today was at 6:36 with sunrise at 7:17. Tomorrow, sunrise will be at 6:37 and sunset at 7:15. Tonight, mostly cloudy with showers and a low of 50 and winds from the north 5 to 10 miles an hour. Tomorrow, cloudy and again a good chance of rain tomorrow with a high of 67 and a low of 54. Tuesday through Thursday, we're looking at a high of 73 and a low of 53. And again, for the extended outlook, we're also looking for a chance of rain for those 3 days. So be prepared. That's all for weather. Back to you, Darcy.
Thanks a lot, Terry. That rain will certainly be an unfamiliar sight. The Dow Jones today, we had the Wall Street closed with quite holding trading. Analysts say it may be another couple days before things get into gear. The Dow Industrial were up 3 points at 2,072 in light trade of 115 million shares. Declines lead advances 7 to 6. The past week of dry weather caused little additional harm to the state's drought-stunted crops. The Iowa Agriculture Statistics official says the condition of the corn crop remained about the same as it was last week, with 9% rated as in good condition, 35% in fair condition, and 56% rated as poor or very poor. 95% of the corn crop was reported as mature. And Jamie's here tonight with the sports. Jamie, it's a busy football season once again.
That's right, Darcy. A lot of football in the scene tonight, or this evening, I should say. Coach Jim Hirschberger and his Buena Vista football team started the 1988 year by pounding the Rams of Cornell in Mount Vernon on Saturday, whopping 45-16. Scott Bailey led the offense with 67 yards on 9 carries. Jim DeMars, a sophomore from Elbert City, led all receivers with 3 catches for 64 yards and 1 touchdown. Big teams are off to a miserable 3-9 start against non-conference opponents this season. But Iowa football coach Fry says that is not a sign of weakness. He says that the coaches gear their preparations for a strong league schedule and the battle for the Big Ten's Rose Bowl berth. Fry says non-conference teams place a greater emphasis on beating Big Ten schools in preseason games. Iowa State coach Jim Walden is trying to head off a quarterback controversy like the one that hounded the University of Iowa last fall. Junior college transfer Brett Oberg led the Cyclones to a 30-13 win over Tulane last weekend in Ames. He says that after the injury of this Saturday against Baylor, but he says after that he's uncertain because injured preseason starter Derek DeGennaro will likely recovered from a strained knee he suffered last month. Walden says at some point the starting quarterback question will be answered, but he says he's not going to let it become a problem for his team. If Eric Dickerson can't get 100 yards against the Chicago stifling defense, maybe no one can. Dickerson ran for 95 yards and 1 touchdown for Indianapolis on Sunday, but his fourth quarter fumble preserved a 17-13 victory for the Bears and stretched Chicago's streak of not allowing an opponent to gain 100 yards to 26. When Dickerson ran for the Los Angeles Rams in 1986, he gained 111 yards against the Bears. That performance is the only one over 100 in the last 42 games against the Chicago defense. The calls from the quarterback in schoolyard football game is always simple. Everyone go deep and someone will get open. It rarely works, but it did Sunday as Joe Montana threw a 78-yard scoring pass to Jerry Rice with 42 seconds left to play to give San Francisco a 20-17 victory over the New York Giants. At Mile High Stadium in Denver, Colorado, John Elway threw for 2 touchdown passes and Tony Dorsett rushed for 113 yards and another score to beat the San Diego Chargers 34-3 to win yesterday, puts the Broncos in second place in the Western Division. The New York Yankees climbed to within 3.5 games of the first place Boston in the American League East. Claudell Washington drove in a 2-run homer in the bottom of the 18th inning to give New York a 5-4 victory and second place. And that's a look at sports this evening, Darcy.
Thanks a lot, Jamie. And that's it for the news this evening. Thank you for joining us, and join us again tomorrow at 6:30. Have a good evening. Good evening, I'm Darcy Krugel.
And I'm John Bailey.
Live from Buena Vista College, Innovation Video brings you the news for Wednesday, September 14th. The most powerful Atlantic hurricane, Gilbert, continues on its path of destruction. The monster storm has killed at least 14 people and has caused hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. The strongest winds from the storm have reached 175 miles an hour, with gusts up to 200 miles an hour. After sweeping across Jamaica, the storm hit the Cayman Islands around noon today and was headed towards Cuba and Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. If the storm maintains, it could hit Texas by this weekend. Tourists in the storm's path have been evacuating.
Residents of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula are preparing as best they can for a hurricane that is big, intense, and deadly. That's all honeymooners Lisa and Jimmy Kierbau could think about. So on the third day of their trip, they returned to the States. They were not alone.
Everybody else was very worried, and you know, wherever they can get a flight, they got a flight out.
After flying through the storm for 8 hours, federal meteorologists landed in Miami. One scientist said the hurricane was one of the most powerful he'd ever seen.
We were seeing green water in long sprays of about 200 yards long or so. Estimated surface wind speeds were probably on the order of 175 miles per hour.
But Tuesday, weather along the United States Gulf Coast was still good enough to allow a day at the beach, though many people spent their time stocking up on emergency supplies. Batteries, flashlights, and ice chests were big sellers. On Galveston Island, emergency officials warned that despite the precautions, the island was not safe and should be evacuated.
We just come in from Southwest 49.
Oil rig workers were taken by helicopter from the offshore platforms off the coast of Louisiana. The words ringing in everyone's ears were these.
I've never seen anything like this in the Gulf of Mexico.
It's a major hurricane, certainly one of the stronger storms that we've seen in the Gulf of Mexico.
Those bracing for Gilbert can only hope that the hurricane won't also make history as one of the Gulf's most destructive storms.
If you've been trying to call the Iowa Radon Project office and can't get through, you're not the only one. The office in Ames says its telephone lines have been jammed following the release of the study showing half of Iowa homes may have radon levels above the federal guideline. If you would like more information on how you can test your home, the number to call is 515-281-7781. National polls released Tuesday found that George Bush is pulling ahead of Michael Dukakis in the presidential race. Bush leads by 8 points in both national surveys, 47% to 39% in a CBS News New York Times poll and 49% to 41% in the Gallup poll. After 3 days of deliberations, a Polk County jury today convicted political activist Mark Curtis of third-degree sexual assault and first-degree burglary. Police say that they caught Curtis trying to assault a 15-year-old black girl last March, but Curtis maintained that he was framed due to his left-wing political activities. Supporters have flooded City Hall with letters criticizing police handling of the case. Yvette Louiselle, an 18-year-old former Iowa State University honors student, was sentenced to a mandatory life prison term today for a first-degree murder conviction. District Judge Alan Good handed down the lifetime and 3 concurrent terms totaling 9 years on lesser charges. The native of Kalamazoo, Michigan, was convicted last month in the December 6 stabbing death of 42-year-old Keith Stillwell of Ames. One man armed with a Soviet-made automatic weapon took 11 hostages at a military recruiting station in Richmond, Virginia today, saying it was a move for peace in Lebanon. Police say at least 6 hostages have now been freed and no injuries are reported. Discussion is becoming heated as the debate continues over the future of U.S. Highway 20. Once the 4-cent gasoline tax was passed, Branstad claimed the development of the highway would be a top priority, including expansion to primarily 4 lanes. Northwest Iowa leaders say that they feel cheated as the DOT denies any intentions of 4-laning the highway. Some $50,000 is being sought in a 10-county area. Storm Lake, Buena Vista County, and the Storm Lake Chamber of Commerce have already committed $2,357. Storm Lake had low turnouts for the school board election yesterday, with only 5% of registered voters casting ballots. Incumbent Dennis Request and newcomer John Traylor cruised to victory unopposed. Request received 270 votes, while Traylor received 276 votes. And we will now have some weather. John Bailey is here. John, we're not having too much rain out there, but looks like we might have a possibility.
Well, yeah, we're going to have a good possibility of some rain for the next couple of days. If you haven't gone outside for the last few hours, it looks like we are going to have some rain in the next couple of days. As you can see over in the weather map right here, we have a low stationed right off the Rocky Mountains. And that low is going to kind of be stalling for the next couple of days while the Gilbert hurricane system is pushing up hot air from the Gulf. And that will bring some showers into our viewing area. Well, stay tuned to Innovation Video News for more weather. We'll be right back.
Beat it. Just beat it.
Just get in and talk about it.
I've got to go home. Oh, come on, Carrie. We're going to a new place.
She wants to go home, right? Let's go. Yeah, let's go. Whoa! You okay to drive?
Yeah, I'm fine. You sure?
Relax.
What's a few beers?
If you don't stop your friend from drinking and driving, you're as good as dead. Drinking and driving can kill a friendship.
I'm John Huston. All my films from the Maltese Falcon on have been about courage, one kind or another. Since I acquired emphysema, I've discovered a very special brand, the courage of those fighting diseases of the lung. What price breathing? Anyone can get lung disease, even babies. Help the American Lung Association fight lung disease. It's a matter of life and breath. It really is.
Innovation Video is your season ticket for Buena Vista College football action. Join us Thursday night at 7:30 for a comprehensive look at statistics and highlights of the action-packed game presented to you by host Tim Gallagher and coach Jim Hirschberger. So pull up your easy chair, sit back, and join Innovation Video for the Jim Hirschberger Show, Thursday night at 7:30.
Welcome back. Well, as you can see over to the west, we have a cold front from the Rockies, kind of stationary. This cold front will be pushing into Iowa very shortly in the next day or two. Down here, down toward the Keys of Florida, we can see Hurricane Gilbert slowly pushing up hot air, moving into the Gulf of Mexico. That will force warm air up into the mid-plains. I mean, right here we'll have a few, right where the jet stream is, we're going to have a few thunderstorms. Here's now the jet stream outlook for the next couple of days. Right where the jet stream will be, right here, we're going to have a cold front. This will be stationary. The jet stream is right here, and this warm air from the Gulf of Mexico will be pushing up, and the thunderstorms will be here. Currently, we'll be having kind of rain right here for the next couple of days. As today, late afternoon, we had this move into Iowa. And by tomorrow afternoon, we'll have most of Iowa covered in thunderstorms and thunder showers, as you can see right here on Thursday morning's map. Right down here, we have the hurricane moving up, and we have thunderstorms. Florida's mostly into the thunderstorm area. And Thursday's outlook for tomorrow, well, let's go to high temperatures. Ames, we're going to have a high temperature, I think about 78. A few other temperatures, Storm Lake was 75 degrees today and low of 58. Those are some of the temperatures. I can't remember the rest, but we'll work on it. The extended forecast, we're going to have a 30% chance of rain tomorrow. Good chance of a few scattered showers in the next couple of days. Next day, we're going to have a few more Friday. In the extended forecast, we're going to have a few more showers, maybe about 60% thunderstorms and a few other things. Right now, we're going to go back to the news desk for more information.
Thanks a lot, John. And that rain will be something different, but you know, we can handle a little rain now and again. Now, the Dow Jones today closed at 2,100.46, which was up 17.42 points. Volume closed at 117,220,000 shares. We now have Chuck with our sports, and it seems like Storm Lake cross country team is doing pretty well once again.
Yep, that's right, Darcy. In his last year as a Storm Lake cross-country team member, Ben Ellingson sparked the Tornadoes to the boys' varsity crown at Monday's Storm Lake Invitational held at the Municipal Golf Course. In this was Storm Lake's third invite of the year. Ellingson tied his career best time of 16 minutes and 49 seconds, easily defeating Spencer's Chuck Brown. Last year it was Brown who set the meet record. The Tornadoettes also improved at the invite. Tina Neer led the Tornadoettes to a 5th place finish with a time of 12 minutes 41 seconds, which was good enough for 4th place out of a total of 54 runners. Moving on in local sports, the St. Mary's Lady Panthers lost an exciting volleyball match Tuesday evening to the Newell Providence Ladies. After St. Mary's built a 4-point lead in the second game, the Newell Providence team came from behind to tie and eventually win by a score of 17-15. Newell Providence had won the first game 15-3 and continued their streak in the third game by winning 15-10. Donna Nagel, coach of the Lady Panthers, said the second game was the deciding factor of this match, which took the wind right out of their sails. Katie Gard led the Lady Panthers in serving with 11 of 14 winners. Wendy Peters had 3 aces. The Lady Panthers are currently winless and take on Granville for a Quad County match next Friday night. And moving on, it was a Grand Slam night Tuesday night as the batters in both the American and National Leagues held some hot bats. Red Sox slugger Jim Rice hit his 8th career Grand Slam off Baltimore pitcher Pete Harnisch, helping the Bo Sox win 6-4 over the Orioles. It was the Oriole pitcher's major league debut and Rice's 38th homer of the season, and there's a look at it right there. Meanwhile, in the National League, Hubie Brooks of the Montreal Expos pounded his 5th career Grand Slam off St. Louis Cardinal pitcher Larry McWilliams. Brooks added a single later in the game to have a total of 5 RBIs on the night, and the Expos won that game 7-1. Now let's take a look at the updated pennant race here. Boston, after its victory last night, now leads the Yankees in Detroit by 4.5 games in the AL East. In the West, Oakland keeps a commanding lead over the Twins by a total of 11.5 games. And turning to the National League, the LA Dodgers are maintaining their 6-game lead over Houston in the West, while the Mets of New York hold a comfortable 10-game lead over the Pirates in the East. And finally, the odds are out for this weekend's college football odds. The Iowa State Cyclones are currently just 4-point underdogs against Baylor, whom the Cyclones host in Ames Saturday afternoon. Coach Jim Walden hopes to turn the odds around and go on to the road to Iowa City the following week with 2 victories under his belt. Meanwhile, the Hawkeyes of Iowa, after falling out of the UPI top 20, are 6-point favorites over Colorado. The Hawks will be glad to have a home field advantage on Saturday against Colorado since their star tight end Marv Cook will not be playing. Cook reportedly re-injured a sprained ankle during last week's romping of the Kansas State Wildcats. He has been doubling as the Hawkeyes' #1 punter, so Hayden Fry will probably have some concern going into that game on Saturday. Darcy, and that's a look at the sports for this evening.
Thanks a lot, Chuck. Sounds like some good football games coming up.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be.
Well, thank you for joining us this evening. Stay tuned for the Edge in Motorsports next. Have a good night.
Night.
Good evening. I'm Darcy Krugel.
And I'm Missy Stump.
Live from Buena Vista College, Innovation Video brings you the news for Thursday, September 15th. After hitting the Yucatan Peninsula with 23-foot waves and winds gusting as fast as 218 miles per hour, Hurricane Gilbert continues on its destructive path today. According to the Associated Press, at least 14 people have been killed and up to 500,000 people have been left homeless. Western Cuba was hit by winds of about 75 miles per hour. Radio broadcasts from Havana said that about 60,000 people had to be evacuated. Communications were cut off by the hurricane and no immediate word of the specific damage or casualties have yet been reported. At noon today, Gilbert was 410 miles southeast of Brownsville with winds of 120 miles per hour. If Gilbert maintains its forward speed, it should be causing hurricane conditions from Texas to Mexico around 8 a.m. Friday. People along the coast are preparing for the hurricane and have been warned to evacuate.
Thousands of residents along the U.S. Gulf Coast have begun boarding up, even though many realize that if Hurricane Gilbert strikes with full force, there may be little left standing.
What I'm doing is probably just making me feel better. That's about it.
You think the place will get wiped out?
170-mile-an-hour winds, Galveston's history.
In Corpus Christi, Texas, hundreds of people are lining up to buy protective plywood, which is now in short supply. Boat owners are scrambling to get their vessels into safe areas.
So we're getting the boats out of the water and hope they don't blow away when we get them up on land.
Many others are planning to ride out the hurricane in their coastal homes, a decision some officials believe could prove fatal.
The sea rises maybe 15, 20 feet, 10-foot waves on top of it, and as all this water comes against the buildings, it just demolishes the buildings.
Galveston city manager says many residents are refusing to evacuate, setting the stage for a major disaster should Hurricane Gilbert strike the city with all its power.
At least 10,000 people dead, because we don't anticipate more than a 60% evacuation here.
But many are listening to the warnings and are leaving their homes for higher ground. Disaster officials hope that as winds continue to build in strength today, thousands more will decide to play it safe and evacuate. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Galveston.
We now have a report from Bob Sheets, who is at the National Hurricane Center.
Good afternoon. This is Bob Sheets from the National Hurricane Center with the latest information on Hurricane Gilbert. At noon today, Hurricane Gilbert was centered near 22.2 north, 92.3 west. That's about 410 miles southeast of Brownsville, Texas. The hurricane continues to move towards the west-northwest, and that means the greatest threat is in the upper Texas coast. The upper Mexican coast and the lower Texas coast. The probabilities indicate that area around Brownsville is the highest probability. Maximum winds remain about 120 miles per hour, but extend well out away from the center from the research aircraft data that we're getting in here today. There's a hurricane warning in effect from Port O'Connor, Texas, southward to Tampico, Mexico. Residents in that area should prepare for the onslaught of this hurricane by tomorrow.
Gilbert has also had an effect on the launch of the Space Shuttle Discovery. NASA Mission Control is in Houston, and because of the hurricane threat to the Texas coast, shuttle boss Richard Truly delayed setting a liftoff date. NASA engineers at Cape Canaveral, Florida now believe they have resolved questions about a tiny hydrogen leak, another reason Truly delayed setting the date. In Iowa news, 4 Cedar Rapids teenagers have been charged with involuntary manslaughter after the boy they were chasing ran onto Interstate 380 and was struck and killed by a southbound car last night. The victim is identified as 14-year-old Brian McMurrin of Cedro Woolley, Washington, who is visiting his grandmother in Cedar Rapids. Also in Cedar Rapids, a controversial abortion issue was settled in court today.
The child known as Baby Miller was conceived while Gina Miller was living with 20-year-old Scott Williams. He wanted her to have the baby. Initially, she planned to abort it. In a court hearing today, though, the two agreed to what attorneys call an unselfish compromise. Miller will have the baby, but it will be put up for adoption. The child's father is not allowed anywhere near Gina Miller during her pregnancy or for 30 days after the baby is born.
I think anybody's ever happy in a compromised situation. I think he's satisfied. Both he and Gina have done an unselfish thing here, and they're to be praised for that.
Miller's attorney said her client was under pressure because we live in a society deeply divided over the issue of abortion. But she says Miller freely chose the option of having her baby and giving it up.
I believe my client feels this agreement and satisfies the needs of everybody involved.
Are you happy?
I'm satisfied. So that's it.
Will you make further attempts to get custody of this child?
No comment at this time.
Equipped with two-way radios, 24 Greenpeace members began what they called a double-pronged action shortly after 8 a.m., arriving in boats and trucks as part of a plan composed after several days of surveillance of Monsanto security practices. Greenpeace leaders say they took action against Monsanto because the farm chemical plant is a source of deadly chemicals being dumped into the river. Governor Branstad still supports expansion of U.S. Highway 20 from Fort Dodge to Sioux City, despite recent remarks by the Department of Transportation head. Recently, DOT thread Dale Riensink said, quote, "I don't believe we are going to build a lot of four-lane highways in the state. I don't believe in giving false hopes," unquote. However, Governor Branstad's office said today that Riensink may have given the wrong impression and that Project 2000 plan is in the testing and pre-development stages at the DOT. Branstad still supports the plan, however. His office admits that nothing will come of the testing for about another year. Missy Stump is here with the weather. Missy, that hurricane seems to be affecting everything in the nation.
Yes, it is. It's what's causing our rain, and it's continuing to terrorize the southern coast of the United States. Take a look at it now on the weather picture. As you can see, the warnings are still in the Brownsville area, moving up to Corpus Christi and the Galveston Island. And watches are now in effect for the southern part of the United States. We'll be back with more weather after these messages.
Just
get in and talk about it.
I've got to go home. Oh, come on, Carrie. We're going to a new place.
She wants to go home, right? Let's go. Whoa! You okay to drive?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You sure?
Relax.
What's a few beers?
If you don't stop your friend from drinking and driving, you're as good as dead. Drinking and driving can kill a friendship.
Users are losers and losers are users. So don't use drugs, don't use drugs.
Hi, McGruff, the crime dog here with Regina, urging all of you to tell him to quit. Take a bite out of crime. For more information, write this address.
Innovation Video is your season ticket for Buena Vista College football action. Join us Monday night at 7 for a comprehensive look at the statistics and highlights of the action-packed game, presented to you by host Tim Gallagher and coach Jim Hirschberger. So pull up your easy chair, sit back, and join Innovation Video for the Jim Hirschberger Show Monday night at 7.
And we're back. We have the temperatures across the United States today. In the Midwest, we're experiencing 60s and 70s, while on the East Coast, we have the 60s. On the West Coast, we have it up in the upper 80s. Meanwhile, on the southern tip, the temperatures are pretty unpredictable due to the hurricane. As you can see, the cloud cover that we're experiencing is due to the hurricane, and we can expect more of much of the same wet weather as the storm will continue. The current weather across the United States, we have cool temperatures on the East Coast with sunshine on the west. Meanwhile, rain showers in the Midwest. Tomorrow, we can expect much of the same, with the rain extending out through the east coast, with cooler temperatures on the east and the usual unpredictable south. The temperatures today: highs, Ames 83, Cedar Rapids 82, Des Moines 81, Dubuque 81, Spencer with 80, and here in Storm Lake 79. Yesterday we experienced a high of 79 with a low of 60. Last year was 82 with a low of 56. Today we had cloudy with thunderstorms, highs 57, low of 44. Winds out of the southeast 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunrise tomorrow at 6:42, sunset at 7:10. Tonight, cloudy with a chance of rain, low of 44, winds out of the southeast 10 miles per hour. Tomorrow will be cloudy with a chance of rain, high in the mid-70s, low in the mid-50s, and the extended outlook. Looks like much of the same, wet, soggy weather, highs in the mid-70s to 80s with lows in the low 60s, with hopefully some sunshine reappearing the first of the week. But again, that all depends on Hurricane Gilbert. Back to you, Darcy.
Thanks a lot, Missy. We'll just have to keep eye on that hurricane and see how our weather turns out. A look at the Dow Jones from today. The Dow closed at 2092.28, which was down 8.36 points. Volume was at 161,210,000 shares. And Tracy Glady is here with sports, and there's a lot of baseball action going on, so we'll hear all about those stories now.
You betcha, Darcy. There really was a lot of baseball. Last night, the baseball parks were full of excitement. Here's just one example. In Boston, Jim Rice hit his 8th career grand slam, leading the Boston Red Sox past the Baltimore Orioles 6-4. Mike Smithson worked 5 2/3 innings to earn his first home victory as a starter since July 19th. Bob Stanley bailed out Smithson in the 6th, but was relieved in the 8th, when the Orioles closed to within 5-4. Lee Smith finished, giving him his 25th save. And in New York, pinch hitter Luis Aguayo's 2-run home run in the 8th inning rallied New York past the Cleveland Indians 5-4 and kept the Yankees close in the American League East race. The Yankees now have won 5 of their last 6 and trail first-place Boston by 4 1/2 games. Dave Winfield started the New York 8th inning with a single, his 3rd hit of the game, off reliever Don Gordon. And in Toronto, Jesse Barfield hit a grand slam, and Ernie Witt hit a 2-run homer as the Toronto Blue Jays defeated the struggling Detroit Tigers 9-1. The Blue Jays sent 9 men to the plate in a 4-run 3rd inning. With a score of 1-1, George Bell singled and Witt homered on the first pitch, making this his 13th homer of the season and the 22nd of his career against Detroit. And here's an update on the Richard Dent suspension. A Chicago television station, WBBM, says it learned from New York sources that the NFL will drop its suspension charges of the Chicago Bears star defensive end. The station says Dent and Commissioner Pete Rozelle struck an agreement on the controversy surrounding Dent's refusal to take a random drug test. Dent's attorney didn't say whether he was able to play Sunday night against Minnesota or not. And that's all we have for sports tonight, Darcy.
Thanks a lot, Tracy. And that's it for the news this evening. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for the West Glen Films next. Have a good evening. I'm Sheila Brunson.
And I'm Mark Higrick.
From Buena Vista College, Innovation Video brings you the news for Tuesday, September 27th. Canada's Olympic hero Ben Johnson, after being stripped of his world record gold medal yesterday, now faces the risk of an estimated $1 million in endorsements and fees for competition. Johnson will be automatically suspended from international competition for 2 years. Johnson's manager said the incident was a tragedy, a mistake, or a sabotage. Johnson was the 7th athlete and 3rd gold medalist to test positive at the Games. The Olympics haven't quite been the same after Johnson was stripped from his medal. Athletes said had this to say about the incident.
Olympians on the practice field felt sympathy and disgust over the rise and fall of Ben Johnson, but there was little surprise. The athletes aware the drug problem is widespread.
If you're doing drugs, they got Ben Johnson, who's going to be next. So there are a lot of athletes running around here like headless chickens right now.
Johnson's disqualification in the 100-meter dash is not the first expulsion in Seoul. Johnson is the 7th man thrown out, and officials expect there will be more. These games feature the highest degree of dope testing in Olympic history, and it's not just out of fair play that dozens of substances are banned. The muscle builder linked to Johnson can be life-threatening.
This is one of the most dangerous anabolic steroids known because its structure is such that its effect on the liver can lead to a number of disturbances, including liver carcinoma.
Being the best is no longer the only motive for wanting to be first. In 1988, Olympians are keenly aware of fame and fortune.
The more the IOC is trying to find ways and means of catching these guys on the drugs, the more the doctors of these guys are working on now finding a way to escape it.
Rick Fredrickson, Seoul.
32 months, a $2.1 billion repair bill, and 7 lost astronauts. Those are the Challenger stakes NASA must face for the launching of Discovery, expected to lift off Thursday. The official countdown started Monday when 5 veteran astronauts arrived. Tomorrow, NASA will turn on the lights at the launch pad. Chuck Henschel, NASA's test coordinator, had this to say about some complications.
Even last-minute glitches in the engines or the boosters, anything like the HPUs or anything.
No, not this time. We're closing out those areas, and there's nothing that we know.
How close did the lightning come to the pad this morning, and did the lightning advisory put you behind schedule on any activity?
Yes, it is putting us behind right now. We did have a lightning within 5 miles of the complex this morning, and it has put us behind, and like I say, it will put us maybe 1 to 2 hours behind in loading our cryos on board for the fuel cells. Now, if we had been flowing when lightning came within the 5 miles, we could continue, but we can't start, and we hadn't started.
A former Reagan administration tax advisor says the next president should raise taxes by $50 billion to reduce the federal budget deficit. The deficit is expected to run $200 billion a year through 1993. A Washington, D.C. tax lawyer said the next president is apt to try to raise money by closing tax loopholes and raising taxes on such items as cigarettes or gasoline. Japan's 87-year-old Emperor Hirohito received another blood transfusion today. Hirohito's condition stabilized despite continued internal bleeding. Among the crowd praying for Hirohito's recovery outside the Imperial Palace yesterday were sumo wrestlers dressed in silk robes. The nation's anti-terrorist chief says this year is shaping up badly. Incidents of international terrorism are up by nearly 1/3 compared to last year. 1988 may end with as many as 1,000 incidents or more, compared to 832 for 1987. Most of these increases are in Latin America. Forecasts predict Hurricane Helene will fizzle out as it moves over the waters of the northern Atlantic. The storm's winds weakened slightly today to 85 miles an hour and was centered about 1,300 miles southwest of the Azores. State investigators say they have broken up a marijuana smuggling operation that brought more than $78 million worth of pot into South Florida and Iowa from 1978 through August 1985. Officials say the trio engineered an enterprise that bought over 98,000 pounds of marijuana. Investigators have confiscated close to 17,000 pounds of the contraband.
University of Iowa researchers will begin developing a blood substitute that may reduce the risk of contracting AIDS or other diseases transmitted through blood transfusions. The blood substitute will be derived from hemoglobin. The substitute could be available within 3 years. The Agriculture Department announced pork producers have voted to keep the hog checkoff by a 3-to-1 margin. The checkoff gives pork producers and the finances that attract shoppers and diners to eat pork. 33,000 voters voted to keep the checkoff, while 9,900 voted to abolish it. The referendum was passed in every state except Delaware. A special hearing will be held this week to determine the extent of damage to the state's corn crop. Senate Agriculture Committee Chairman Burl Preeb says the legislature has an obligation to look into the problem and assure farmers all measures will be taken to protect their income. Buena Vista College's newspaper, The Tack, received an All-American rating. The rating was given through the 1987-88 National Scholastic Press Association competition. Mark Hagrick is here with the weather tonight. Mark, what's it looking like in the weather? Any warm weather or cold weather or what?
Well, I'm afraid this isn't one of the sunshiniest forecasts I've given lately. As we look on the national weather map, of course, we had some clouds in the area today, but the big problem is this huge mass of clouds out to the west here, and that will be coming our way, and it won't be bringing sunshine, that's for sure. I'll be back with the rest of the details after these messages.
What you eat, how you look, whether you do drugs or not. You know, cocaine, crack. See, only you can decide, because the only person responsible is you. Now, if you make the right choice, there's nothing you can't accomplish. If you make the wrong choice, all your other decisions are made for you.
You will be able to feel the pulsating power of Innovation Video as it brings you the edge in motorsports every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6:45 here on Innovation Video.
Lou Gossett is annoyed.
Hey, you know, we've got some real bad guys in this country. Abusing public lands, defacing parks, robbing historic sites. These are our lands, yours and mine. You know, the good guys. Now, you gonna let a bunch of bad guys run us off our public lands? Or are you gonna help save the lands? Let's show these bad guys that the good guys always win.
Write Take Pride in America. Post Office Box 1339, Jessup, Maryland, 20794.
Innovation. In-na-ve-shin. A noun. 1. The introduction of something new. 2. A new idea, method, or device. Video. Vid-e-o. An adjective. Vidi, to see, plus o, to hear. 1. Being related to or used in the transmission or reception of the television image. Innovation. Video. Now you know.
So you look at the Wednesday morning's weather map, you see that low pressure system I showed you on the current weather map before the break is moving on in, and it's bringing with it rain and showers, and as Wednesday afternoon comes around, it's still going to be in the area, and it's going to kind of hang around a little bit and give us even more rain tomorrow afternoon. However, let's step back and take a look at some of the area temperatures from yesterday. So we see we had pretty nice temperatures in the 80s, ranging from 80 in Dubuque up to 85 in Council Bluffs. Lows last night ranged from the upper 40s in Storm Lake and Ames to 60 in Sioux City, and 62 in Spencer. Here in Storm Lake, as I said, we had a low last night of 48 and a high of 81. A year ago, it was a little warmer with a high of 86 and a low of 53. Sunrise today is mostly clear with a high of 73, a low last night of 53. East winds 5 to 10 miles an hour, and the barometer is falling at 30.20 as that low pressure comes in. Sunrise this morning was at 6:53. It'll set tonight at 6:50. Tomorrow, the sun will rise at 6:54 and set at 6:49. Tonight we'll have variable cloudiness and a 70% chance of rain as that low front starts to affect our weather. A low 50 to 55 and northeast winds around 10 miles an hour. Tomorrow it'll be cloudy with, again, a 70% chance of rain and clouds too, I'm sure, with a high in the mid-60s and southeast winds 10 to 20 miles an hour. On the extended outlook, Wednesday through Friday, pretty good chance of rain, 80% for tomorrow night. That'll go down to 30% Thursday, and then we'll have highs in the 60s and lows in the 50s. So it's definitely not the happiest weather forecast, but we had such a dry summer, we really shouldn't complain about the rain anyway, should we?
Well, I don't know about complaining, but yes, you're right, we did have a dry summer. Chrysler Corporation is trying a new guarantee. If you don't like your car or truck, you get your money back. It's an experiment available in Washington, D.C. until November 11th. Refunds are also being tried in Denver, Colorado to trade products of the same value. There on the screen you can see the Chrysler plan. The Dow closed today at 2082.33. It was down 2.84 points. The volume was 113,010,000 shares. Tracy Glady is here with sports. Tracy, what's it looking like in baseball action?
Okay, Sheila, in baseball, the Los Angeles Dodgers ended the race in the National League West last night with a 3-2 victory over the Padres in San Diego. The Dodgers will now gear up for their opponent in the League Championship Series, the New York Mets, who clinched the Eastern Flag last week. And the Dodgers will meet the Mets 1 week from tonight. And in the NFL last night, the Los Angeles Raiders came from 24 points down in the second half to notch a 30-27 victory over the Denver Broncos. Chris Barr kicked a 35-yard field goal with 2:25 left in overtime to seal the win. Los Angeles ran 4 running plays to the Broncos' 17-yard line before Barr nailed his third field goal of the night. Earlier in overtime, Tim Brown had a 76-yard punt return for a touchdown wiped out by a clipping penalty on Stephen Adams. Denver built its 24-0 halftime lead on a pair of 1-yard touchdown runs by Tony Dorsett, a 7-yard touchdown pass from John Elway to Steve Sewell, and a 39-yard field goal by Rich Carlos. Dorsett gained 119 yards on 32 carries to move past Jim Brown into second place on the NFL's career rushing list. And American diver Greg Louganis made Olympic history by winning his second gold medal of the Games, coming from behind on his last dive to capture the platform competition. Louganis is the only male diver to sweep the springboard and platform events in back-to-back Olympics. And Carl Lewis comes after another gold medal in the 200-meter dash at the Olympics tonight. Lewis won the long jump yesterday with a leap of 28 feet, 7 1/4 inches on his 4th try. He was also awarded the 100-meter gold after Johnson was stripped of the medal. And on the Olympic basketball court, the United States has a semifinal showdown with the Soviet Union. It's the first meeting between the two teams in the Olympics since the 1972 Games in Munich, where the Soviets beat the United States on a controversial basket in the last 3 seconds. And also the U.S. women's basketball team won its semifinal game against the Soviets. A 102-88 victory put the women into the championship game against Yugoslavia. And Iowa coach Hayden Fry says the Hawkeyes' Big Ten opener with Michigan State Saturday will be a knockdown, drag-out affair. The series between the two teams is deadlocked at 12-12 and 1. And each of the last 6 games has been decided by 6 points or less. Fry says despite each team's lackluster non-conference record, Iowa and Michigan State should be in the thick of the Big Ten conference race. Iowa enters the game with a 2-2 non-conference mark, while Michigan State is winless in 3 outings. The Spartans have been beaten by Rutgers, Notre Dame, and Florida State. And the Buena Vista Beavers football team is rated number 3 in the West region for the 2nd week in a row, according to the AP NCAA Division III poll. So that's what we have for sports this evening, Sheila.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tracy. And thank you for watching us tonight. Be watching again. Thank you and have a good evening.